After running through the reboot of Saints Row that came out last year in 2022 and seeing people's reaction to it and hearing where the roots of Saints Row really came from, I decided to go back and play the original Saints Row, which honestly has aged really well. It's almost 20 years old at this point. I believe it's about 17, give or take. Fuck it, we're gonna round it off. It's 20 years old at this point and has aged really well. You know, I've said it before, my first entry into the Saints Row series was Saints Row 3. I played Saints Row 4, I played Gat Out of Hell, and then technically I worked my way backwards playing Saints Row 2, which is considered to be the best out of the games, and then Saints Row 3 is right next to it. It's kind of hit and miss. But this was my first time playing the original Saints Row, which after stubbornly scouring Steam for it, I realized that the original Saints Row is actually an Xbox exclusive. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth with this review. I wouldn't even really call it a review. It's just a perspective about my first time playing the first game into the established Saints Row series. The one that set up the foundations that to this day, even by people that have never played the original game, call it the Grand Theft Auto knockoff, which is, to be fair, I mean, this game came out 2 years after San Andreas. I think anything that came remotely close to the Grand Theft Auto quote-unquote formula at the time would have immediately been called a Grand Theft Auto knockoff. If Saints Row came out before San Andreas, I think it'd be completely different, but that's a topic for another video. Right off the bat, what I actually really love about this game is it's all about establishing yourself, you know, that gang warfare. The beginning cutscene actually shows every gang that's involved in this game's story. With the Vice Lords, you know, these guys wearing yellow shirts, everything is color corrected, which is simple for someone that is kind of dumb like me. Yeah, the Vice Lords tagging over West Side Rollers graffiti turns into a little shootout. De Los Carnales show up with a little drive-by. People start killing each other, and then right before you become executed, some members from the Saints show up and save your ass, and then they basically invite you to come over to their headquarters for a little gang initiation, and by that, you know, get your ass whooped by like 7 guys while everyone watches. It's neat. It's almost like the Boy Scout, only instead of earning badges, you earn respect, and instead of further down the line, you suing your troop master for inappropriately touching you, you're hiring other men to defend you in court. But similar to what we know with the Saints Row games, it starts up with the character customization. Obviously, it's nowhere near as in-depth as any of the games that follow it, but your hairstyles, your body type, your race, facial features, it's all there. The only thing is, in this game, your protagonist is completely voiceless. When it comes to voiceless protagonists, I personally don't really mind it. As far as cutscenes in this game goes, it doesn't make that much of a difference because you're basically just being told what to do either way. There's no input being thrown in from the guy you play as. The only problem that arises because your character is voiceless is, let's say you're going from point A to point B and there's nobody else in the car besides you and one other character, then that character would randomly do one of two things. Either after a decent period of silence, they start having their own personal monologue and basically seem completely insane because they're talking to themselves, or they start spewing the same one-liners at you over and over again. That's actually the only complaint I can make as far as audio goes. Sound design has aged phenomenally well with this game. When you're talking about voice acting across the board, from NPCs out in the world to characters in cutscenes to the sound of weapons, I was very surprised with how top tier the audio is. Obviously, the guns don't sound as impactful as many weapons do in other games these days. I would actually even say they rival the sounds of the guns from the recent Saints Row. They sound like they have a little bit more oomph to them and not like they're all just toys. Meanwhile, the voice acting, I mean, I can't believe at times that this game came out in 2006. I mean, visually, obviously, because the game is as old as it is, it's not gonna look photorealistic like we're accustomed to. But even then, games that are much older, especially around this time period, I think have their own little personal charm to them. Their presentation is a time capsule. It doesn't feel like I'm playing a game that is almost 20 years old. It doesn't feel like a game that I'm not even enjoying. And this is a game that establishes everything. Insurance fraud, mayhem, snatch, escort activities are all present in this game. What I actually even liked about this is that every time you start a new one, because there's a new escort activity or mayhem activity in different districts of the city, every time you start one of these new activities in a different district, you get a small little cutscene introducing you to a new character, giving you some type of exposition of what's going on in that section of the world and why you're doing what you're doing.
Your table is this way, sir.
我是王生态，欢迎
My name is
光临
Wang
我的茶馆
Shengtai. Welcome
请
to
坐
my tea house. Please sit down.
很高兴认识你。我
It
们
is
这
an
儿
honor to
很
meet
需
you.
要像你这样的勇士。
It is rare in this country to find someone with your tenacity.
这里面的人都曾陷害过我
Contained
的家人
inside are the specifics about a group of men who have wronged my family.
要狠。
Go and speak to them, but they are not to be harmed.
He heard me wrong. I wish for them all to be dead.
That's not really a thing in even Saints Row 3. You know, you're just doing it just to do. In those games, and at least in this game, there's some type of explanation behind it. Speaking of which, there's even little extra stuff in this game that I wish more games did. If you played any of the other Saints Row games, I'm gonna compare it a little bit more to Saints Row 3 because I played Saints Row 3 more consistently. But in that game, you level up by acquiring respect. As your respect grows, then specifically in Saints Row 3, you unlock different abilities, and that's your way of basically acquiring a skill tree. In this game, in order to progress the story, you have to boost your respect. Every activity you do gives you a bump in your respect, and even the type of clothes you wear can contribute to giving you a respect boost. And you don't even have to always contribute to activities like insurance fraud, mayhem, or anything else. You can do little stuff like, let's say you carjack someone. If a passenger is in the car that you just hijacked, then for a minute you got to drive at high speed and not give the passenger a moment to get out of the vehicle safely. At the same time, you're constantly dodging the police. If you can maintain a high speed while not getting stuck anywhere or giving the passenger a minute to get out of the car, not only do you get a respect boost, but you also get some extra cash. This game has clothing stores and even friendly fires in this game, which is basically ammunition if you play Grand Theft Auto, or just a gun shop. During the day, the stores are open naturally, but at night you can kick the door in, go straight to the safe, and then there's a little mini game. If you can crack it, cool. You can completely rip the safe off, all the contents inside, and then just book it. Or even during the day, if the store's open, you go straight to the back of the store, you engage with that safe, same thing. It's not much, but those little mini games, from the safe cracking to impromptu hostage situations, I actually thoroughly enjoy. And because, like I was saying, this game runs off of respect in order to progress the story, you have an incentive to try every single activity. The only downside to the whole respect system is you can't do missions back to back to back. You have to do one mission, which also story missions don't contribute to respect, which I think is kind of stupid. Each one of these gangs also have strongholds. So the Las Carnales, the West Side Rollers, and the Vice Kings all have strongholds. And in order to take down a stronghold, just like playing story missions, you do have to up your respect bar. So it kind of gives you a very shitty decision to make. Do you want to take out a stronghold? Basically just clear out a building or a drug lab or, a hidden gun stash that's owned by one of these gangs. You're just clearing through waves of enemies. And then once that's cleared, the section of the city is now owned by the Saints, contributing to an hourly pay rate of how much money you're receiving. Or you can wait on the stronghold and continue to progress the story, whether it be, either one of those three gangs that you decide to progress in. So that's the only thing. The story is kind of dragged out because you do have to make that decision with your respect. Am I going to progress the story? And then after you play one mission, now you got to do a handful of activities, and then 20 minutes later, if you're lucky, then you can play another story mission. That's really my only solid, genuine complaint. Everything else has aged phenomenally well. As I said previously, the extra cutscenes when you get introduced to newer activities, or even, impromptu hostage situations, being able to break into stores and rob the safe. Little things like that, I would love to see brought back into, I would say, a reboot of Saints Row, but we see how that last one went. But I want to hear from you. What was your first Saints Row game? And if you played all of them, which one is your favorite and why? Saints Row seems to have a little bit of an interesting history, and I'm probably going to revisiting Saints Row 2, Saints Row 3, and even Saints Row 4. So if you want to see those videos or even talk Saints Row down in the comment section, feel free to hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.